Welcome to the August 2026 edition of Business and Policy News, brought to you by the Farm Advisory Service. This newsletter helps you to look ahead, prepare for industry developments, and stay up to date with the latest research findings and policy updates. Along with our regular monthly updates on policy, arable, beef, sheep, and milk, in this edition, we will also be looking at the pig sector. Hello, my name is Brady Stevens, and along with this month's guest contributor, I will be presenting this publication. First up, we have this month's news. Heat waves, wildfires, and water scarcity dominate the headlines. The UK has now experienced its fourth heat wave of 2026, and if the Met Office predictions are correct, a fifth heat wave is expected soon. More than half of England is now suffering from drought conditions. There are wildfires burning in Glenmore in Scotland, in Dunwich Heath and Suffolk in England, and across Europe, most notably in Bordeaux, France, and Madrid and Valencia, Spain. There is little doubt that weather patterns are changing and that temperature extremes are now greater than they have been in the past. Whilst debate ensues about the contributions of key exacerbating factors behind the wildfires, including climate change, changes in land use, and muir-borne restrictions, the immediate priority is to get the fires under control as quickly as possible whilst minimizing the risks to life and livelihood. Plans for minimizing the risk of future fires, managing fires when they occur, and managing water scarcity can all follow once the fires have been extinguished. The extreme heat experienced across much of Central and Southern Europe continues to impact on cereal production and future estimates. As Mark Boucher-Gibbs writes in this month's arable update, the dry, hot weather has resulted in several countries reporting reduced yields for wheat, barley, and maize, causing the market outlook to change, with prices beginning to firm. Our further interest section for August includes links to two articles by Jack Ewell about soil moisture monitoring, a timely subject given the ongoing dry weather. Much of the rainfall that we have seen during the last month appears to have been very localized. Let's hope that we have more substantial rainfall by the time you're listening to this. Chancellor warning to supermarkets as concern grows over cost of living. In a recent interview with The Telegraph, the new Chancellor, John Healey, has warned of more cost of living pain to come for British consumers as the Iran war continues. Mr. Healey went on to warn supermarkets that he will not allow them to take the public, quote, for a ride as a result of the Middle East conflict, stating that he would be clamping down on any price gouging at supermarket tills and petrol pumps. The warning shots from the Chancellor follow renewed fighting in the Middle East. Petrol is now the most expensive it's been since 2022. The Brent crude oil price is currently around $90 per barrel, having been over $100 per barrel during last week. Petrol and diesel prices on UK forecourts are around 164 pence per litre and 180 pence per litre, respectively. Despite high petrol and energy costs, Consumer Price Index inflation has reduced by 0.2% to 2.6%, although there remains an expectation that inflation will increase later this year as second-round effects of the Iran conflict feed into the economy. For example, increased oil and gas prices causing higher costs and wage increases within the wider economy. At the last Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee meeting on the 29th of July, 2026, the committee voted by a majority of 6-3 to maintain the bank rate at 3.75%. The next MPC meeting is scheduled for the 17th of September, 2026. In this August edition of Business and Policy News, we have good news for beef producers as finishing cattle prices start to improve. There are also positive reports in the dairy sector, as several processors have confirmed an increase to farm gate milk prices for August. In the arable sector, there are signs that the outlook is beginning to change as the market reacts to depressed yields impacted by the dry, hot weather across Europe, coupled with continuing concern about Ukrainian output reaching the market. In the sheep market, lamb prices have been continuing to ease back, although prices remain above last year. This month's specialist article is by SAC consultant George Chalmers. George provides an update on the pig market, where margins are really under pressure, with producer prices below the cost of production. It's a scenario that cannot be endured much longer without further reduction to producer numbers. Finally, just a couple of reminders. If you've not already completed the June agricultural census, please do so by the 31st of August 2026. The census can be completed online at www.ruralpayments.org. With the harvest almost completed on many farms, some farmers might now be needing to consider plans for establishing ecological focus areas for 2027.
The updated greening rules for 2027 are now available at ruralpayments.org, so please see the website for details. We will cover the main changes to the guidance in next month's episode.
Let's take a look at this month's policy briefs. Scottish Pig Producers Support Scheme. Scotland's independent pig producers are set to receive a £2 million emergency support package after months of falling pig prices left many farms selling pigs below the cost of production. The scheme, which opened for applications on the 15th of July, will compensate eligible independent producers for part of the gap between the price they received and 85% of the standard pig price, with payments covering losses from the 1st of March to the 31st of August 2026 based on slaughter date. The Scottish Government says the package is needed because weak European markets, processing disruption, and ongoing supply chain pressure have driven prices down, leading to an estimated 15% reduction in breeding sows in Scotland's independent sector this year and prompting some producers to leave the industry. While industry groups have welcomed the funding as a much-needed lifeline, they stress it is only a short-term measure and that fairer market returns will be essential to secure the long-term future of Scotland's pig sector. The closing date for applications is the 15th of September 2026. For more information on the scheme and how to apply, please see the links in the show notes or contact pigproducers.support@gov.scot. New calls to boost Scotland's wildfire response. After a series of large blazes in Scotland and the UK, farming organisations are urging the Scottish Government to strengthen the country's ability to tackle wildfires. For farmers and crofters, the issue goes well beyond damaged moorland. Wildfires can destroy grazing, woodland, wildlife habitats, fencing, and infrastructure, while also putting livestock and people at risk. The Wildfires Strategic Action Plan was published in March 2026, setting out a coordinated approach to wildfires, but farming organizations are calling for a dedicated aerial wildfire response in Scotland, alongside greater investment in prevention and faster emergency response to safeguard farming businesses and the wider countryside. Scotland bans glue traps. It is now illegal in Scotland to use, supply, or possess glue traps designed to catch vertebrate animals, including rodents. The new rules were introduced on the 1st of July 2026 under the Wildlife Management and Muirburn Act 2024 and aimed to improve animal welfare by banning a pest control method widely criticized for causing prolonged suffering and for trapping non-target wildlife such as birds and hedgehogs. Anyone found breaking the law could face a fine of up to £40,000 or up to 12 months in prison. For farmers, the change means any rodent glue traps still held on the farm in workshops or vehicles must no longer be kept or used. Cracks appear over the future of brown eggs. As supermarkets look to cut their carbon footprints, the future demand for white and brown eggs is becoming less clear. Some supermarkets plan to switch their own brand range to white eggs, saying white hens eat less feed, lay for longer, and produce eggs with a lower carbon footprint than brown eggs, while also offering welfare benefits. However, other supermarkets have no plans to follow suit, instead committing to continue offering brown eggs alongside white. For Scottish egg producers, the split highlights how retailer sustainability targets could influence future flock choices, breed selection, and supply contracts. During the late 1970s, consumers expressed a preference for brown eggs in the UK. Until fairly recently, the British industry has produced almost 100% brown shelled eggs, but white eggs are definitely becoming more common again. Any wider shift will depend on shopper acceptance as much as retailer policy. For now, producers are being advised to keep a close eye on market signals before making long-term investment or flock decisions. This month, we have 4 key dates to note. The extended deadline for completion of the June agricultural census is the 31st of August, 2026. For the Future Farming Investment Scheme 2025, the evidence submission deadline has been extended until midnight on the 30th of September, 2026. Blue tongue movement restrictions are enforced between the 1st of June and the 9th of September, 2026. Closing date for applications to the Scottish Pig Producers Support Scheme is 15th of September 2026. For more information on any of the policies, updates, and articles in this edition, please see the show notes, where you will find numerous links to relevant websites, publications, consultations, and further sources of information. Moving on to Arable. Market overview. Whilst the current firming of prices is certainly welcome, the most important question is whether this is simply another weather rally or the start of a more sustained improvement in grain markets. The answer lies in a combination of factors rather than one single event. Escalating geopolitical tensions, deteriorating crop prospects across Europe, tightening global maize supplies, and firmer energy markets have all arrived at the same time, forcing traders to reassess the level of risk within the global grain balance sheet. For much of the past 12 months, the market has largely ignored bullish news, but sentiment now appears to be changing. Conflict in the Black Sea. The most significant driver has undoubtedly been the escalating conflict in the Black Sea region. Throughout much of the war in Ukraine, grain exports continued to move, despite repeated disruption, allowing world markets to remain relatively well supplied. That confidence is now being tested. Ukraine has intensified attacks on Russian infrastructure around the Sea of Azov, an area believed to handle between 25 and 30% of Russian wheat exports, while Russia has responded with further strikes on Ukraine's grain terminals around Odessa. Ukrainian farming organizations estimate that around 30% of the country's export capacity has now been affected, with several deep water ports either suspending or severely restricting loading operations. Importantly, this is not currently a production issue. Both Russia and Ukraine are expected to harvest respectable crops this season. Instead, the concern is whether those crops can reach international markets. Domestic grain prices in Ukraine have weakened as grain backs up within the country, while international prices have moved in the opposite direction, as buyers begin to factor supply risks into the market. Should these logistical problems persist, demand for European grain is likely to increase, providing further support to UK prices. Hot weather. Weather has become the second major driver of the recent rally. Much of Western Europe has endured one of its driest springs and early summers for many years. Rainfall across France, Belgium, Western Germany, and southern parts of the UK has been well below average since March, with some areas receiving little more than 25% of normal rainfall during the past 3 months. Several periods of extreme heat, with temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius in southern Europe, have arrived during critical stages of crop development, reducing yield potential across a wide range of crops. As the French wheat harvest nears completion, analysts at Argus estimate the wheat crop, excluding durum, at 30.8 million tons. That represents a fall of 8% compared with 2025 and leaves production 6% below the 5-year average. Meanwhile, as harvesting gathers pace in Germany, the Farm Cooperatives Association DRV has reduced its wheat production forecast by 0.7 million tons to 21.9 million tons, around 5% lower than last season. DRV has also revised down its outlook for other cereals, forecasting a 5% year-on-year decline in barley production and a 10% reduction in oat output. The biggest weather concern, however, may prove to be maize rather than wheat. Large areas of the European crop experienced heat and moisture stress during pollination, with only 41% of the French maize crop currently rated good or excellent. The United States Department of Agriculture has consequently reduced its estimate of the EU maize harvest by 3.7 million tons to 53.8 million tons, while the International Grains Council has also lowered its global production forecast. Lower maize production inevitably supports wheat and barley markets as feed manufacturers increasingly substitute maize with other cereals. Further support has come from the latest USDA World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates, which point toward steadily tightening global maize stocks. Global ending stocks are now forecast at around 275 million tons, the lowest level for 13 years, while stocks held by the major exporting countries are expected to fall to just 4.8% of annual consumption, below the 10-year average of 5.2%. These are not critically tight supplies, but markets rarely wait for shortages to develop before reacting. Instead, traders are beginning to build more weather and supply risk back into prices. Energy costs. Energy markets have also played their part. Renewed tensions across the Middle East have strengthened crude oil prices, providing support to vegetable oils and, in turn, the wider oilseed complex. Futures Exchange Corporation Matif November rapeseed futures have climbed above 558 euros per ton, their highest level since late 2024, while soybean oil, palm oil, and canola have all moved higher. Continued Chinese buying and forecasts suggesting another El Nino weather pattern later this year have added further uncertainty and helped reinforce the stronger tone across agricultural commodity markets. Price rally. From a UK perspective, global and regional supply concerns are now beginning to feed through into domestic prices. November 2026 UK feed wheat futures have increased from £177 per tonne at the beginning of July to £199 per tonne at the end of July, an 11% increase, surpassing the previous high of £190 per tonne in early May associated with the Iran conflict. Current estimates suggest the UK wheat crop may total around 13.5 million tonnes, roughly 1.5 million tonnes below earlier expectations, while the barley crop also appears to be smaller than last year. As supplies tighten, basis levels have strengthened. The traditional discount of feed barley to feed wheat has narrowed considerably, and quality premiums are beginning to return. Reports of malting barley premiums approaching £15 per tonne are now emerging, something largely absent over recent seasons. Harvest reports remain mixed. Winter barley yields have generally been respectable, although quality has proved variable, with concerns over screenings and grain retention likely to increase the proportion entering feed markets. Spot prices continue to come under pressure from harvest movement and limited export demand, but deferred values remain much firmer, reflecting expectations of tighter supplies later in the season. For Scottish growers, the picture is rather different from much of mainland Europe. Although the prolonged dry spring reduced yield potential in some eastern areas and on lighter soils, crops have largely escaped the extreme temperatures experienced across France and Germany. Attention will now turn firmly towards the wheat and spring barley harvest, where for the latter, grain nitrogen content and screenings are likely to prove every bit as important as yield in determining crop value. Should European malting barley production continue to disappoint, Scottish growers producing premium quality grain may find themselves well placed to benefit from stronger demand and improving premiums later in the marketing season. Grain prices for July 2026 are as follows. Wheat, £180 per tonne. Feed barley, £156 per tonne. Feed oats, £123 per tonne. Beans, 215 pounds per ton. And oilseed rape for November is 428 pounds per ton. Let's take a look at the latest from the beef sector. Finished prices pick up in July. Finished cattle prices in Scotland have slowly but surely improved over the last few weeks. Increased slaughterings, growth in imports, and ongoing consumer price pressures all contributed to a muted finished price in early summer. Finishing margins have been significantly squeezed for several months now. However, prices have moved upward since early July, now up 16 pence per kilo from the week ending the 4th of July, and have continued upwards, with R4L steers reaching £612.50 per kilo deadweight at Scottish abattoirs for week ending 18th July. At the end of July, prices quoted are around 616 pence per kilo deadweight, with the expectation that prices will increase towards 620 pence per kilo. This is because young bull throughput appears to be falling from its seasonal peak a few weeks ago. Therefore, processors will be looking to ensure they have the numbers to keep cattle lines moving. Consumer demand is likely to be a key driver in beef prices in the coming weeks. Prices are currently in favor of the producer. However, it is a fine balancing act between supplies and consumer spending. QMS reports strong demand for red meat in their most recent retail market update, although signs of consumers trading down to more affordable options remains, for example, moving away from steak, buying smaller packs, and choosing higher fat mince. Targeted promotions and campaigns towards key summer events are expected to provide further support for red meat consumption in Scotland. However, this has the potential to lead to carcass balance issues. The beef price moving towards a more satisfactory level will mean finishers will start to see a more encouraging return to the farm gate, which is much needed as we approach the autumn season calf sales. Strong store trade. Trade for store cattle continues strongly, with prices largely trending similar to 2025, with store auction volumes remaining tight. At recent store sales, strong demand remains for short-term types, with trade softening at some markets for grazing types. This is mainly due to the heatwave conditions and lack of rainfall affecting grass growth in some parts of the country. Store prices are also likely to reflect the shifting balance of production, with suckler-bred calves remaining in tight supply and beef-sired dairy calves often being managed in specific supply chains rather than traded at store sales. Numbers forward at sales at this time of year tend to be less, with the focus being on silage making and harvesting, which is also contributing to prices holding firm. Scotland's breeding herd. There are signs that Scotland's suckler herd is stabilizing after several years of significant recorded declines. Data recently released by QMS has shown that in April 2026, beef-sired females aged over 30 months on Scottish holdings sat at 386,300. This represents a year-on-year decline of 1.5%, the smallest annual fall recorded since 2022. More recent data from Scott EID suggests that the rate of decline may have dropped further to around 1%. South of the border, suckler herd decline in England and Wales continues to outstrip Scotland, with a 2.4% fall in beef-sired females over 30 months recorded in April. While suckler herd contraction is slowing and store prices are holding strong following a rally to finished prices, there is cautious optimism within the sector that the Scottish beef herd is moving towards stabilization. Name breeds and consumers. Are named breeds important to consumers? AHDB have recently looked at consumer perception of named beef breeds, highlighting that consumer awareness of beef breeds varies. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Aberdeen Angus remains the most recognized, with 85% of consumers aware of the breed. Wagyu, although a smaller part of the named breed market, has witnessed the fastest rise in consumer awareness over the past few years, up by 12% to 75%.
If you're enjoying listening to business and policy news, why not try one of the other Farm Advisory Service podcasts? The latest episode of Agriculture focuses on the experiences of neurodivergent individuals in the agricultural community. Guest Wren Fisher works for the Soil Association, and she also has her own business providing neurodivergent coaching, training, and advocacy. Wren co-founded the brand new Rural Neurodivergent Network, a nationwide WhatsApp group to facilitate individuals who are neurodivergent to find their tribe. Tune in to this episode to find out more.
Moving on to sheep. Seasonal declines supported by slower supply. Prime lamb prices have continued to ease into July following typical seasonal trends. Prices remain above the 5-year average and are ahead of this time last year, with deadweight SQQ sitting at 809.2 pence per kilo for the week ending the 25th of July 2026, up 55.1 pence per kilo year on year, according to AHDB. Well-fleshed lambs are certainly demanding a premium. Although supply has seasonally increased with grass-fed new season lamb hitting the market, 2026 prices continue to be supported by an overall tightened supply following early marketing of hogs this year. Scottish auction throughput of new season lambs has been strong this year, however, with QMS reporting in their Q2 market report that supply has been above the 5-year average and well above 2025 levels. This is most likely down to favorable conditions at lambing and good grazing conditions in early spring, supporting grass growth during early lactation and getting lambs off to a good start. Cull ewe prices have remained buoyant throughout the summer, with prices up 24.46 pence per kilo year on year to sit at 152.18 pence per kilo for the week ending the 25th of July. With increased numbers continuing to come onto the market post-weaning and breeding selections in the next few weeks following the dry weather, we may see prices easing slightly in the short term in line with seasonal trends. Short-term outlook. In the short term, lamb prices could see some further easing before recovery into the autumn, as supply continues to trickle through, although this may be slightly impacted by the drought conditions seen in many areas of the country. These droughts may result in a longer time to finish in dry regions, although many have now started to supplement to help address any shortfall of grass. Last year saw a slight increase in the mature ewe flock. Although scanning numbers may be down following the 2025 dry spell, lamb numbers in 2026 are likely to remain steady, although it is too early to tell for certain. Retail demand could continue to be slightly pressured domestically as the high prices seen in early 2026 are passed on to consumers. However, imports have reduced in Q2 due to flock contractions in the southern hemisphere, and this has the potential to boost demand for domestic lamb. Export demand to the EU remains strong from the UK, further supporting the domestic market. Drought conditions throughout England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland may have an impact on lamb performance and supply in the coming months. However, many flocks have started to provide supplementary feed earlier to boost performance until grass growth recovers. At the end of July, southern and eastern Scotland had just seen its first rain for several weeks, which may limit the impact of the dry spell. Drought conditions may also impact the store market, with many flocks forced to sell a proportion of lamb store instead of finishing. Farmers may take this approach if grazing continues to be tighter than budgeted for, potentially increasing store lamb supply and easing returns. There is already a good demand in the market for short and medium keep lambs. Retail demand update. Retail trends for Q2 of 2026 were released at the start of July and reported by AHDB. Overall, lamb sales declined in volume over the previous 3 months, but spending has increased, with the strong market prices trickling down to consumers who are consequently spending more per visit. Lamb steaks remain a popular cut for consumers over larger joints such as roasts, suggesting that larger joints tend to be favored for special occasions. Other cuts that have seen growth include those considered added value, such as sous vide and marinades. Sous vide is a cooking method where food is sealed in a bag and cooked in a precise temperature-controlled water bath. These cooking methods are favored for convenience, but also well suited to the summer barbecue market during the warmer months. Prepare in advance for breeding sales. The breeding sale season is already underway, with early pedigree ram sales followed by female and shearling rams in August and September. Now is the ideal time to evaluate flock performance to best assess replacement needs before sale day. The decisions made on sale day can make a huge impact on the success of the following breeding season and overall profitability of the flock. Consider market demands, production system, your own flock goals, and those of the seller when selecting stock to ensure every purchase can make a good return. Our final industry update looks at milk. Milk production data. Milk production continues its seasonal decline with lower milk prices, volume management schemes, and recent heat waves adding further pressure on output. The latest data from AHDB estimates GB milk production for June 2026 at 1,065 million liters, 40 million liters less than the previous June, a decrease of 3.6%. Daily production is currently 33.19 million liters for the week ending the 18th of July, which is 2.5% less than the previous week and 2.6% less than the same week last year. For the UK, June 2026 production was estimated to be 1,321 million liters, which is 43 million liters less than June 2025. Turning to farm gate prices. The DEFRA farm gate milk price for June 2026 was 34.41 pence per litre, up 0.05 pence per litre, that's 0.1%, from the May price and 20% lower than 12 months ago. First Milk, Arla, and Lactalis have announced price increases for August, whilst Mueller announced a price hold. The organic milk price is currently around 56.4 pence per litre. The following Scottish milk prices are quoted in pence per litre. First Milk for August, 32.85. Mueller and Mueller Direct for August, 34.5. Graham's for July, 34.5. Arla Farmers for August, 38.15. And Lactalis Fresh Milk for August, 34.87. Moving on to dairy commodities and market indicators. The markets are heating up as the recent heat waves hit milk volumes across the UK and mainland Europe. In the UK, temperatures exceeded 35 degrees Celsius on several days in June and July. At one stage, production fell 4.5% below the same period last year. In addition to lower milk volumes, heat stress has also reduced fat and protein content. This has tightened cream availability and created a ripple effect across dairy commodity markets, with concerns over limited supply prompting short-term buying and position covering. Skim milk powder prices have strengthened. With fewer butter churns operating, less skim milk was available for drying, resulting in reduced skim milk powder production. Despite the firmer market, trading activity remained relatively quiet. The average price for the period rose by £70 per tonne to £2,360 per tonne. Mild cheddar. Similarly, with more milk diverted to fresh dairy production, cheese stocks have tightened slightly, providing upward support to prices. Buyer interest has increased, with many looking to secure product at previous price levels, while sellers have generally been reluctant to release stocks in anticipation of further price rises. Nevertheless, opportunities remained for buyers to secure favorable deals where sellers were motivated to move stock. Prices rose by 150 pounds per ton to 3,050 pounds per ton. The bulk cream market has seen the most positive recovery due to diminishing milk supplies. While the average price shot up from £1.30 per kilo to £1.70 per kilo at times, this has since slid back as milk volumes have recovered slightly. The average price for the period was £1,530 per ton. Butter. The high cream prices made it uneconomical to turn on butter churns beyond contracted volumes, putting some tightening on markets. However, stocks remain plentiful, with reports suggesting stores are still full, although some product is beginning to age. The market remains relatively quiet, but pockets of buying activity emerged as purchasers sought to secure supplies ahead of anticipated price increases. This provided some upward momentum, resulting in a modest strengthening of butter prices. Prices rose by £80 per ton to £3,320 per ton. As a result, there was a positive change in both the actual milk price equivalent and milk for cheese value equivalent. The milk market value indicator increased by 1.32 pence per litre to 34.92 pence per litre for July. The latest global dairy trade auction on the 21st of July showed a rise of 1.5% in price when compared to the previous auction, with the average price across all products reaching $3,815 per ton. Dairy profits masking volatility. The latest milk cost of production report from Old Mill and the Farm Consultancy Group highlights strong returns for some dairy businesses in 2025-26, with average profits reaching 12.43 pence per litre from income of 54.81 pence per litre and costs of 42.38 pence per litre. Milk income rose to 46.38 pence per litre, while non-milk income from calf and cow sales contributed a further 8.43 pence per litre. However, profits are forecast to fall by around 2/3 in 2026-27 to 3.96 pence per litre as milk prices weaken, production costs remain under pressure, and extreme weather continues to challenge businesses. The report found that higher yields alone did not always translate into higher profits, with cost control and technical performance key drivers of success. The top 10% of farms achieved profits of 24.31 pence per litre, compared with a loss of 2.56 pence per litre among the bottom 10%, as better performing farms generated stronger milk returns while maintaining lower production costs. Those businesses that have invested in technology, genetics, and efficiency improvements are seeing the rewards through improved performance and cash flow. As margins tighten, farmers are encouraged to review costs, cash flow, and longer-term business plans to ensure they remain resilient and well-positioned for the future. Scientists detect Ionis-linked antibodies in newborn calves. Researchers at the Royal Veterinary College have identified a potential new way to study early life exposure to Ionis disease using blood samples already collected from newborn calves. The study found that antibodies linked to Mycobacterium avium subspecies paratuberculosis, or MAP, the bacteria responsible for Ionis disease, could be detected in calves after receiving colostrum from their mothers. However, researchers stress that the test cannot diagnose Ionis disease or confirm infection. The findings could help improve understanding of when calves are most at risk and support future herd surveillance. The study, involving 38 dairy calves and their mothers, found calves born to cows with detectable MAP antibodies had higher levels of MAP-specific antibodies, consistent with transfer through colostrum. Researchers highlighted that most current monitoring focuses on adult cattle, leaving gaps in our understanding of early life exposure. Further work is needed, but the approach could provide a practical way to investigate calf risk without requiring additional blood sampling.
Hi, my name is George Chalmers. I'm a senior consultant with SEC Consulting, based in the Turf office in Aberdeenshire. My article looks at the pig sector. The pig sector is in the midst of another trough, with producers once again selling their pigs at well below the cost of production. With producers facing a perfect storm of oversupply and falling EU prices, leading to a sharp drop in finished pig values, combined with factory and processor contract issues, as well as rising input costs, 2026 has already seen a significant reduction in the breeding herd and the loss of a number of independent producers. Prices have fallen since August 2025 and continued to drift downwards through 2026, losing around 30 pence per kilo over the past year, or around £28 per finished pig. In the past year, producers have seen their margins swing from the black to the red, with substantial losses per pig now being made, with little sign of improved prospects in the short term. Standard pig prices, SPP, EU spec. Prices started August 2025 at just over 208 pence per kilo, however have slowly crept downwards over the past 12 months, falling to 177 pence per kilo in May, with prices hovering slightly above this since, reaching 109.7 pence per kilo by mid-July, according to AHDB figures. Crucially, however, is the fact that there is a wide variation in prices being paid to producers, with most processors having given notice to independent producers' contracts. Some producers are finding numbers cut, or worse, having supply arrangements terminated completely, forcing them to find alternative outlets for pigs on the spot market. Spot prices for bacon pigs in mid-July were just under 165 pence per kilo, according to the Tribune. Scottish producers are suffering even more, with prices as much as 30 pence per kilo below the SPP, according to NFUS. EU prices have a major impact on the UK market, with the price differential between UK and cheaper EU products continuing to be very high, nearly 50 pence per kilo, around twice the differential normally seen, as the continued effects of African swine fever in Spain impacts on export destinations. This makes EU pig meat much more competitive and attractive to UK buyers. Slaughter weights. Slaughter weights have crept downwards over the summer as backlogs have been cleared following some factory issues which had seen average slaughter weights as high as 95 kilos as recently as April. Currently, average slaughter weights are just under 90 kilos for the first time in nearly a year. Cull sows and weaners. Cull sow prices have unsurprisingly dipped sharply in recent months as the breeding herd in both the UK and EU is contracting due to the current poor trading conditions and are currently at around 23 pence per kilo, according to United Pig Cooperative. This is less than half the value seen at the turn of the year. Falling finisher prices has seen pressure on weaner values, particularly with ample supply. Costs of production. The latest published margins from AHDB for Q1 of 2026 showed producer margins had gone from positive to negative from the previous quarter, to a loss of 4 pence per kilo, or about £4 per pig, compared to the positive margin of 11 pence per kilo, £10 a pig, in Q4 of 2025. This was mostly due to a drop in price of 13 pence per kilo between the two quarters, with feed and other costs also increasing slightly. Feed continued to make up 60% of the total costs. With the next set of published margins due to be published soon by AHDB, the continued fall in the standard pig price seen through the spring and summer, along with increasing costs, means that losses are expected to be much greater in Q2. This will be exacerbated by the fact that many producers are not receiving the standard pig price and are being paid a significant discount for their pigs. Losses are racking up for pig producers, and following a settled spell of positive, albeit fairly small margins, they are now eating away at their reserves again. Scottish Pig Producers Support Scheme. July saw the Scottish Government launch a support scheme for independent pig producers in light of the challenging market conditions and losses currently being made due to the low prices being received. The scheme will run until the 31st of August and will provide support for the period from 1st of March to the end of the scheme. The support payment will be based on the difference between the price received by the producer and 85% of the weekly standard pig price, with the total fund extending to £2 million.
Business and Policy News has links in the show notes to allow you to dig deeper into further articles of note. This month, we have 4 top picks. It's strawberry season. FAS TV visits Maine's of Errol farm to see what it takes to produce some of Scotland's finest strawberries. Join brothers Jamie and William Arnott and Jamie's wife Alison as they share how they're building on the family legacy with 70 acres of tabletop strawberries, an on-site packhouse, and a workforce of around 200 seasonal staff. From growing to packing, get an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at modern Scottish strawberry production. Our second pick focuses on soil moisture monitoring. Following on from last month, where we highlighted water management webinars and articles, this month we highlight 2 articles by Jack Ewell from SAC Consulting that look at soil moisture monitoring. The first article gives an overview of monitoring technologies for farmers and growers. This article offers a practical look at the main options and key factors to think about when deciding what may suit your business. For those wanting to experiment before investing in fixed or in situ moisture sensors, portable meters remain a useful entry-level option. These handheld devices provide instant readings at a single depth. They enable quick spot checks in various fields, and they can be a practical starting point for smaller operations or a helpful addition to fixed sensors. And finally, we highlight a disease surveillance video. This month's Sector Focus article looked at the pig sector. In this video, George Chalmers from SAC Consulting and Pernie Jorgensen from SRUC Veterinary Services give us an introduction to what porcine, reproductive, and respiratory syndrome, or PRRS, is, signs of PRRS in pigs, transmission, diagnosis, and how to control an outbreak. You can view the original version of all these articles and watch the videos using the links provided in the show notes. And if you have any questions, please email advice@fas.scot. From all the business and policy team, thank you very much for listening to this audio edition of Business and Policy News. Remember to like Business and Policy News to get notified of future episodes of this monthly podcast. Our next edition is due out on the 10th of September. A written version of this newsletter is available on the FAS website. To receive a copy each month, search for FAS newsletters and subscribe to Business and Policy. This newsletter was edited by Alistair Beattie and included articles written by Alistair Beattie, Heather Stewart, Mark Boucher-Gibbs, Sarah Balfour, Lorna Shaw, Kira Sanikin, and George Chalmers. This podcast is produced in association with Scottish Government and was presented by me, Brady Stevens, produced by Heather Stewart, edited by Cameron Waugh, with executive producers Kirsten Blackwood and Carrie Hammond.